Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. I know it's been a while since I last posted, but this is a follow-up part two on kind of my Q&A and my journey through as to why I started this page. So if you haven't checked that out, go check it out right now and subscribe to the page. Thank you everyone for watching, and without any further ado, let's get right into the video.
High school was definitely a growing experience for me, and it's these tough moments that kind of helped me develop this page, and I wanted to share some of the lessons learned along the way. The first one is that the path that's meant for you is not always the easiest one. It's most likely going to be the harder one. After the Ontario Summer Games, I was invited to try out for this team that was, much older. The players were, already very accomplished in their own right. They were much bigger, faster, and stronger than me. The morning of the tryouts for this new team, I decided, you know what, if they asked me to go, I should show at least the decency and the respect to go and see what it's all about. So I think in that right there, you kind of learn that if other people show confidence in you, then there's no reason why, you shouldn't have the same confidence in yourself. They wanted me to be there, so I figured I should go and see what it's about. Don't close any doors for you, leave as many doors open as possible. I went to the tryouts and I ended up being offered to respond to the team. At this point, it was a very difficult decision for me, just given that I was playing with people who were much more experienced than me. I didn't know if I was going to get a lot of playing time, but in the end, I realized that playing with people who are better than you, similar to hanging out with people that are smarter than you, more ambitious than you, it's usually a good thing for your growth. So I decided to join this team. Now, the first year was an adjustment. Again, just having a different mindset about what you really bring to the team and realizing what a team is really all about. I know I mentioned before that hockey really taught me that, but this was a different environment for me, at least in the volleyball space, playing with people I wasn't familiar with. But I think the biggest thing is taking the time to really sit in those uncomfortable feelings of growth, because the good news is that you're growing and it's going to feel uncomfortable. Fast forward to January of that season, I ended up breaking my wrist in a game, and depending on how long this wrist took to heal, it could have been a season-ending injury, with provincials and nationals coming up in April and May. But luckily, good things happened. I worked hard at physio, and I was able to come back ahead of time in March. And the very first practice I came back, I ended up breaking the exact same wrist. So I ended up straight back in a cast, and that's one of the most demoralizing things to, work so hard to come back and then have it taken away again. So at this point, I thought, I'm not playing again this season at all, and the first season will kind of be like a bust. But luckily, again, I ended up coming back for provincials, and my team finished second in Ontario. And I kind of realized at this point that what you work for in those times where you didn't know if you were going to come back, it just makes the victory even sweeter at that point, and it makes your accomplishment feel that much better, knowing that you worked hard for it and that you had some low moments to get to that high point. Following that, I was actually invited to a Team Ontario selection camp. The top 40 players in the province go to a camp in the summer, and again, this kind of came out of the blue. I wasn't expecting that at all, given it was my first season on this new team and just coming off an injury. And so I made the most of that opportunity, and I was selected to Team Ontario to play against the other provinces that summer. And again, you're playing with people who are the best of the best. You're playing against the people who are the best of the best, from across the country. It's quite intimidating. And long story short, we ended up winning gold at that tournament, and that really taught me that the ceiling is really boundless. Whatever you put your mind to, you can really go and do it, even if you have these setbacks. The setbacks almost put you in a place where you have to work even harder, and when you work harder, good things happen. So that was kind of what I learned from this first instance, and I'm so glad that I really took the chance and opened my heart to join this new team, because I know if I had a closed heart and I didn't go and try out with this new team, none of this would have happened, right? And that was probably the best moment of my volleyball career up to that point. And in the very next season, when the expectations are even higher, for the team, and the expectations I put on myself as well, I ended up missing almost the entire season due to a shoulder injury. And again, this is kind of like that second time, with the wrist injury, when things are going great and it all falls apart right there, you kind of wonder like, what did I do to, have this happen to me again? And at this point, it was almost like going through the hockey thing again, where you feel like, things were going great, you're engaged, you're getting better, you're, gelling with your teammates, all that is, working on all gears. And then to lose it right there, it does a lot, again, like I said, to, how you view yourself and how even other people, view you as well, which I'll touch on a little bit later. I missed that whole season. And then the opportunity came up for me to, go to a different team, playing my own age group, with the same club. And this was a difficult decision because I hadn't, played volleyball in over half a year. So, like I said, I didn't know how I was going to perform, and I guess other people, didn't know how I was going to perform either. But I decided it was time for, a new challenge. And, on top of returning from the shoulder injury, a new challenge to join a different team yet again and kind of take what I learned from that first team to this team. I had to realize at the time that, I would have to take these small steps to get back to, playing at a level, that I know I can play at. And, I made the jump over to this different team. Again, it was different playing with, new teammates, new coaches, different team systems and team values, team culture. At provincials, we ended up finishing third in the province, and we went to nationals, knowing that we could be a top team on any given day. Our team finished second in Canada, which was great for everyone involved. Really, kind of showed me that the best things that you can accomplish in life sometimes come on the heels of some adversity that you face. That kind of brings me now to I'm sure you've been wondering about the school part. Since this is an alumni page for PET. And I touched on it earlier, high school was definitely a learning experience for me. I would say that honestly, I wouldn't be where I am today if it weren't for PET. And that's why I feel so grateful for, all the teachers, classmates, administrators that, have helped me along the way. And that's why I kind of want to give back through this page, because I think, like I said before, it's something special that we can share together. Probably the biggest question that a lot of PET kids, come into high school thinking is that they need to know what they want to do for the rest of their life as a teenager. And when you say it like that, it kind of, doesn't sound like a realistic expectation for, a 14, 15, 16-year-old to decide. Going into high school, I thought I was going to join, all the clubs, all the teams, and that didn't really happen. But the biggest thing that I was putting pressure on myself to decide right then and there is, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? And I think that's an approach that many people take, and I don't think it's the most productive approach for everyone. I know there are some people who have known what they want to do since grade 4, and that's great and all, but I would say that that's the minority of people at PET and high school students in general. So going into high school, I had that kind of pressure on myself. I recognize now that I put that pressure on myself and it wasn't productive. And if I could go back, I would take high school as a learning experience in general and not think of it, as I need to figure out, what I need to do. It's more figure out what you like and you don't like in general. It doesn't have to relate to school or work or anything. Some of the biggest, some of the best memories I have and some of the most productive memories I have weren't actually in the classroom, and they weren't things that you can find on a textbook. I think we all put that pressure on ourselves to, get the best grades, study and go to a good school and things like that. But I think towards the end of high school, I kind of put less pressure on myself to figure it out, even though it was more imminent and I need to decide. I think taking it at face value for, high school for what it is, and recognizing that you don't have to have it all figured out right now, but if you make small steps and you kind of figure it out along the way, I think that can be a very productive approach. I actually remember in grade 9, I told my teacher I wanted to be an optometrist, a dentist. So basically 2 doctors that you don't have to go to med school for, because I didn't think I would ever make it to med school. But I wanted to have a doctor in front of my name. I was good at science, all that, and then my backup plan was to be a personal trainer. I don't know why, but I just thought it was glamorous, and you could help people get into shape, all those things. I had a very, I would say, altruistic view on what I wanted to do. And that's not to say I don't want to help people now, but I just think back then, I just figured, I'm good at science, my grades are all right, and I want to help people and I want to have a doctor in front of my name. It's really evolved to understanding more about what each function really means. And I'll touch on that later. And that's been a huge part of why I created this page because, even as I see my little brother and, his friends grow up, they kind of have this perspective that, I want to be rich. I want to have, glamour. I want to have fame, all those things. And, some people that's what they want to chase. That's what they want to chase. But to me, I've realized that there's more to it than having, these external, validation and external status attached to what you do for a job. And keep in mind, what you do as a job is not who you are. It's something that you do in your day to day, but it doesn't define who you are at the same time. I went in and I kind of thought, I would dabble in the medical field, without going to med school. And my goal was just get good grades. That's it. And when you adopt the mindset that you just want to get good grades, it's possible. I'm not saying for everyone that you might not get the good grades in the best way possible. And what I mean by that is you could cheat, you could exhaust yourself and burn out. You don't take risks. These are all big things that I think can really impede someone if they're just looking at the result. My first real exposure to business, which is what I study now, is through my brother. As I was entering grade 11, he was going to university, and looking back now, that was probably like one of the best things that's kind of worked out for me, is because I wasn't even thinking about business, to be honest. I didn't really even know what business kids really study, to be honest. He talked about how it's very multifaceted. You can be creative in some aspects, you can be very analytical in some aspects, and I figured I'm good with numbers. And now that I recognize that having someone who's like gone through this experience, it really helps. And that's one of the biggest things that I'm grateful for in my high school experience, is that I had someone I could talk to about his experiences in it. Because before that, thinking about it now, you would just go online, maybe search what the admission ranges. Every program would try to make themselves sound good, of course, but you don't really know the nitty gritty of what it's like to be at that school. And this is probably the biggest first specific event I can say regarding to school that helped me form this page. So I kind of kept business in the back of my mind. I didn't really think anything too seriously of it. I still was leaning towards the science part. I struggled through grade 11, all the sciences. I didn't particularly enjoy like chemistry, physics, biology. They were all pretty difficult to me. I didn't really gravitate towards one or the other. And that's kind of how I went all the way up until grade 12. Now, going into grade 12, that was probably the hardest moment of my high school career. Like I said before, putting that pressure on yourself to find what you want to do is an immense amount of pressure. And I would say I crumbled under that pressure, alongside, there were family things out of my control, health issues out of my control, the pressure of finishing my volleyball career strong, both at school and, at rep. And I would say I crumbled, under that pressure. I remember I had a very difficult first semester. Things were not going my way at all. My head wasn't in it. And I remember sitting in grade 12 biology class, and, no disrespect to biology, I remember sitting there in the morning and I just thought, this is not what I want to do at all for the rest of my life. I don't have any interest in, the anatomy, the, parts of a cell, things like that. I can't do this for the rest of my life. I remember I went straight to the guidance office and I said, if I drop this, what are my choices? Because up to that point, all the programs I wanted to go to, you need the biology, you need chemistry, things like that. So I went there and I said, what are my options? Guidance counselor says to me, you could do arts, you could do, social sciences, or you could do business. And I'm like, wait a second, I talked to my brother about business before. And, I don't think there's a problem with it. And, that's really weird to say that, it's not that I really loved it, it's just there was no problem with it. So I was like, okay, I guess at this point, since it was already in the back of my mind, I'm gonna commit to this business thing. But my grades were so low during that first semester. That was one of the hardest moments, where I was like, how am I gonna get anywhere in this business route when I have grades that are nowhere close to where they need to be? And I'm not saying I was a perfect student before, I'm just saying they were way lower than they've ever been. So it was the worst moment for that to happen. But I knew there was a way to get it done. When there's a will, there's a way. Aside from that point on, that I can either go to a school that, doesn't have great prospects, I wouldn't have a great time, I don't even know if I would get in, um, or in the back of my mind, I was thinking, you know what, I've seen it done before. I can take a fifth year of high school. And you might be thinking there, sitting, whoa, like fifth year of high school, that's like frowned upon, that's not okay, that means, you need extra help. And for a long time, I did think that. I kind of, dealt with that battle in my head. I'm like, do I really like go and do that when it's so like frowned upon in my mind? Or do I take this year to like really better myself, and then like years down the line it won't be such a big deal? With this trade-off, it was kind of evident to me that I shouldn't really care what other people were thinking. I really thought about it for a long time. Can I really do what's not normal? And thinking back now, I'm so glad that I did what was not normal, and I'll explain all the reasons why. But I hope that's another lesson, that taking the conventional path isn't always the one that's right for you. And in that moment, again, I decided that the path I really didn't want to take as much turned out to be the right path. And I remember I finished the first semester in grade 12 with maybe a 60 something, 70 average. I remember just thinking, okay, I have this really far off dream with a time horizon of, a year and a half, 2 years to get into a top business school. How do I get from where I am now to where I want to be in about 2 years? So I'm thinking, okay, you've been good at, planning, how you're going to get from, this level in sports to the next level. It must be kind of similar. There's things that you can control, your effort, your attitude, and then there's things that you can't control. So I devised this plan, probably a crazy plan to someone who's never thought of that idea before. I say to myself, okay, like, just because you're going to take another year doesn't mean you can just, throw away this grade 12 year. You can start to turn things around, use this year to get all your stuff under control, and next year is when you pounce, you do well grade 13, fifth year, and you make it. Okay, that was my plan at the time. But I do remember thinking, okay, so there's a few parts that you need to have before you apply for university. There's, the grades, obviously that's super important. There's your supplementary application, and then there's your knowledge of what the school is all about. So I decided to start with the last one. What are these schools all about? Now, you might be thinking, okay, business schools are just going to teach you, how to do accounting, how to build a financial model, how to lead a team. And that is true to a degree, but there's so much more that I found out from doing research on these schools than just, those technical skills. You should read like the job reports that they have for their graduates, the programs that they put their students in, all the extracurriculars that their students have access to. And I see all these things on the website, but then I still feel like I'm missing just one key aspect, and it's that you don't know what it's really like going through the day in and day out grind of going to that school, and what the people are like around you, what the professors are like around you. You don't really have access to that information. Up to that point, most of my research was just on the school website, maybe like Reddit. I don't know, I took that with a little bit of grain of salt. And I thought back to my conversation with my older brother, and he was really able to give me an in-depth perspective on, his specific school and what it can really offer him. So I kind of made that connection a little bit early on, that it's better to really hear from someone who's been through it than to just, read about it, in this case especially. While making good progress on my research, and that grade 12 year was the infamous year where COVID, became a global pandemic. The whole world basically just shut down. And I'm thinking, this is like the worst time for there to be a global pandemic, right when I'm starting to like figure things out. I remember thinking to myself, if you just take a step back for a second, everyone is figuring these things out right now. Nobody has really gone through a global pandemic like this before. So you have that everyone's, in the same boat. And obviously there are more important things to life at this specific point in time than just school. So I try to keep, a very broad perspective. I thought, that, it might just be, a month, 2 months, 3 months. Who really knew at that time, right? Nobody really knew at that time that it would be like years as a shutdown. I do remember that I had this plan to, work on my studying habits and work hard to get to where I want to be in the following year. So I made sure that I used that time to really control what I could control at that time, and that's my effort level. Like a bunch of my friends had already, signed their letters to go to their school next year or so, and there was a mark freeze, so they didn't really, care to, hand things in. There's nothing wrong with that. I know, for them, I wouldn't have done, I wouldn't have handed anything in either if I was already committed to a school. But for me, I was in a slightly different boat where I needed to, like I said, progress to that point where next year I would, make a serious run for what I wanted to do, in post-secondary. And I remember one specific teacher told me that nobody else in the class handed things in. And, they probably didn't want to mark, anything, but I remember they told me that they appreciated that I was still trying, even though, everyone's marks were frozen and they couldn't go down, right? But they said that they really appreciated me still reading, the material and handing in these assignments because, it showed that I really wanted to do well. And that was really important to me. So, even when you think that, it doesn't matter and nobody else is trying, I still found it really important to control what I could control and control my effort level. Over that summer, I had the idea that I should try to get ahead where possible. And what does that really mean? Well, the first thing I thought of was, well, I know these applications are coming up, and for business school, typically you have to either do a video interview or write an essay, typically about extracurriculars, challenges you've been through, things like that. I saw all these things coming, and one of the biggest pieces of advice I can give, for applying to these programs is start early. Make a list of, life experiences, and really take a moment to reflect on what makes you unique. What do you really bring to the table, and do your research on the schools, their values that you have, and see if you are a good fit. And you can write about these kind of things. Once you've done that, then you can start asking for help for other people that can kind of refine what you've written. And I don't mean get them to write it for you. I mean just the little like grammatical things, because that's what they're looking for. They're looking for someone who can articulate themselves and reflect deeply upon their experiences. That summer, I decided to actually do summer school again, to retake a course I took in that first semester just to get my marks up. And I know, not everyone agrees with the idea of summer school, but I felt like for me that was what I could do at the time to, take a small step to get to where I want to be. And, with the world shutdown happening, I wasn't going anywhere anyway, so I figured I would do that during the summer, work on my essays, and by September I would be ready to, ask people to help me, proofread my essays and kind of do more research on what it means to go to these programs. So September for my, fifth year rolls around, and I remember thinking to myself, you know what, this is terrible. All my friends have graduated. They're all, on their way to, graduating, getting a job, all those things. It felt like almost, they had won, grade 12 year and I had lost. But the more I think about it, that's not a fair way to look at it. Although I did need more time to achieve my goals, it doesn't mean that I failed necessarily. I was making good progress with, my applications. I felt like I had a really good set of courses that year to go into business school. And this is when it came to asking for help, asking people who have been there before, guidance counselors who deal with a lot of applications, some teachers that can help you with the grammar things. I'm not that great at writing. But most importantly, the thing that I really gained from asking for help was the networking idea. And I know that's kind of a buzzword on this channel, but one of the teachers in particular that I asked to kind of help me go over my essay, they said, I know people who have gone to these schools that you're applying to. I think it would be really great if you talk to them. They can really tell you, what it's like going from PET to the school, exactly like how I want to do. They understand that they come from a culture at PET, but then they go to a different culture at one of these business schools. And I remember having this one really great conversation. They know exactly who they are, and they told me, one school in particular, it's great. The job prospects, they really help you, learn things outside of the classroom, which I really agreed with. And overall, they said they set you up for success in all aspects of life. They really care about you as, a holistic person, not just someone who's going to do spreadsheets all day. And I kind of gravitated towards, that school. I think you can guess which school it was. And I remember being so grateful for that. And that was really where I would say the light bulb really went off in my mind, that if everyone can kind of have this experience where they get to talk to someone who's really been through it, and I mean they go through it day in, day out for 4 years, that's super valuable for them to share their experiences with me. I felt like I knew so much more after talking to this one individual. And after that, my mind was set that I was gonna go to, Ivy. That was my dream. After I talked to this person, they said, you know what, it's a great school. You're gonna have no regrets. And at that point on, I figured I should just focus super hard on Ivy, and I'm gonna hopefully make it. I had no idea that, I would be even in the running for it, but I figured, I might as well take the shot for it. I probably had one draft at least per week between September and January when it was due. And that's just for, one school. And thinking back before I started writing it, I was like, okay, this might take maybe 3 or 4 drafts and I'll hand it in. But when you really think about it, you're making that investment of your time up front so that you can study for those 4 years and then graduate from that school. So thinking back now, it's a good investment to spend some time, ask people about your essay. And, I highly recommend starting early, asking people for help, keep going through the drafts. That's the only way you're going to get to a draft that you're really, really happy with. So I remember handing it in and I felt like there's a huge weight off my shoulders, but I was like, okay, that's still a far off dream. You're unlikely that you're ever, gonna make it to those schools that you want to apply to, even if you work hard for it. It's a top school. Your chances just statistically aren't that likely, I guess, is what I was saying to myself. So January goes by, February goes by, March, I focus my time on, doing as best I can in school, getting my habits right, really embracing this opportunity as, a second chance, if you will. It was honestly better for me given the situations of the pandemic. I mean, there were no like distractions at all. You weren't really going out that much. It was just about strictly finishing school strong and getting ready for university for me. That's how I took it. I remember the deadline is June 1st. For schools to send you your offer, you have to reply by June 1st. And between February, March, April, I got, 3 offers, but they weren't my top choices. So I was like, okay, you have a solid foundation. And I was actually getting ready to commit. I would say by the last week of May, I was down to 2 schools, and I honestly was going to pick the wrong one. I was ready to accept the offer. I was like, there's no more offers that are coming in. I'm not getting into my top choice. It's May, there's 1 week left. They're not going to send me an offer. And I was stuck between these 2 choices. One was a very good school, but not so great business program. The other one was the other way around, where it was a not so great school, but a good business program. And I had a hard time choosing between the 2, to be honest with you. And I remember a week before the deadline came, I get an email. It says, congratulations, you received an offer to Ivy. I couldn't believe my eyes. And I remember running upstairs and telling my parents, I'm like, oh my gosh, I just got to Ivy. And maybe like for 2 hours, I was, really excited. I was like, this is great. It's a dream come true. Of course I'm going to accept. And then after that 2 hours, it's like reality hits you and you're like, wait a second. Am I really going to be able to succeed in a program like that where everyone else is exceptional? And I couldn't make it out of grade 12. There's no reason why I'd be able to make it into a top program. And I remember kind of spiraling, and I'm like, okay, maybe I shouldn't accept this offer, even though this is what I've dreamed of for a long time. And I remember I reached back out to some people that I know who went to Ivy, and I remember talking to them. And I remember one of them literally said to me, they said, you've got to be silly if you don't accept this offer. Like, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. If you don't accept this offer, you're soft, basically. And this is where I say that the harder path is often the one that is the right path for you. And taking the easy path in life doesn't necessarily always give the best results. So I felt confident after, a few phone calls, and I knew what I had to do. I accepted the offer and I was ready to go in. It's my first year at Western in that September, and I'm thinking, okay, there's a lot of people from, different cities, different parts of the world. It's not like PET at all. It's really a mixing pot of, a ton of different people. And I remember that I kind of realized a little bit later on that, professional networking is a huge part of your education too. And as someone who's kind of shy and reserved, I didn't necessarily jump on that right away. And maybe I should have started earlier. I remember how, important it is to really figure out, what kind of job you want. Is it in finance? Is it in consulting? Is it in marketing? And one of the things that's huge at Western and in the business world specifically is coffee chats, where you talk to someone who's older than you, who's been through it, who's held positions, and you kind of like pick their brain and have a conversation about what it's really like working in each of these functions and for specific companies. And I remember that was really difficult for me. I don't really like just reaching out to someone out of the blue, hoping they reply. And I remember thinking, there's got to be a better way to do this. This was also around the same time where, you're in res and you're living, in the same building as people who, are studying science, they're studying math, kinesiology, poli-sci, all these things, right? And I remember thinking, it's really interesting hearing about, what they're learning, because as a business student, I feel like people have this idea that, you're just doing coloring books, you're just doing the ABCs, you're not doing anything too hard in business. And I remember thinking it's really interesting, what these, science kids are doing, these history kids, geography kids are all doing. And this was, around the time I was thinking, a lot of businesses actually involve, multiple functions. For example, biotech, and even the companies that, we invest in finance are related to other functions. I remember having this one coffee chat where someone told me they were investing in a metals and mining company, and it was helpful to know, science and geography for that. So it's always been huge for me to, be curious about what other people are doing, really. And, like I said before, I was interested in science before, so it'd be a natural progression for me to, learn more about science. And to kind of close the loop on something I discussed earlier, I actually had the opportunity to work in a dental office in the summer, and I realized that it's not at all what I thought it would be like. And I guess I'm glad that, I didn't go through with being a dentist. And again, that's an example where, firsthand experience, or, talking to someone who's been through that experience, it really, really gives you a clearer picture. I had no idea what it was like to be a dentist before I ended up working in the dental office. And then I realized at that point that, I didn't necessarily want to be a dentist, but there is a huge business aspect as well of running a dentist office. So it was valuable for me to have that experience and talk to a dentist, even though they're not necessarily, in business. And on top of this, I would meet a lot of kids, who went to private schools, they went to other schools as well. And it was kind of weird because when you tell them you're from Markham, their next question is usually, are you from Pett or one or two other schools? And I'm thinking, oh, even people from, other places know about Pett. And I'm thinking it must be, that's either a really good thing or a really bad thing. I don't know. But so I'm like, okay, Pett must have, a reputation of some sort. And I kind of took that away in the back of my mind. I also, had a friend who was from a private school in Toronto. And to me, it didn't really make sense why they were paying more for 1 year of private school than 1 year for university. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized it's for the alumni network, because a lot of the people who graduate from there are very, well off and, in powerful positions. So another light bulb kind of went off where it's about really the network. And I was thinking, okay, but why can't Pett do that? So then I started thinking, I was like, we can have an alumni network too, because, there's tons of people from Pett who, go to great programs, achieve lots of great things, work socially, volunteering, all those things. It's a very well-known school. People do great things. And, I'd love to see, even more, Pett kids be able to go, reach their dreams, go to these top schools in, any discipline. And I think, if we can really help each other with this knowledge, I think that'd be a great place. And, because we share that connection, I just felt it'd be a lot easier to talk to people and, reach out kind of out of the blue. It wouldn't necessarily be so weird. It'd be like, hey, I saw you went to Pett, I also went to Pett. And it's just a lot easier to share that conversation. I feel like you have a lot more in common, whereas you're just reaching out to someone who you have no idea who they are. It might be a little bit more difficult. After my first year, I remember I had the opportunity to help a family friend write their application. And I was like, you know what? I think this could be the start of something. I had that opportunity a while back to, get help from other people. If I just kept this, circle of giving back, I think more people would kind of be in a better space where they had a better idea of what these schools really were like. And I think that is something I wanted to give back to the community because, like I said before, I think the Pett community really helped me, get to where I am today, and I wanted to give back. So I had the idea for resume writing, and this was around the time where I had foot surgery. I couldn't go out, talk to my friends, but I also kind of wondered. I said, what are my friends up to these days? Am I gonna am I gonna keep track of them? Because after they graduated, I stayed in high school. A lot of them I didn't talk to, So I figured this would be a great way to connect. I was in a cast, I couldn't go anywhere. This would be a great way to connect. So I launched the page. This was also around the time where my brother started receiving magazines from UBC. They kind of send out like a monthly magazine, I think, where they outline a specific graduate. Here's a fun fact about them, here's the story, here's how they're making a difference in the world. And I thought, you know what, it'd be great if we could connect, all the PET graduates like that, where they're achieving great things. Let's interview them, write a blurb about them. That'd be really cool. And I thought at first I could do it on an anonymous basis because I was really worried what people would think of it. And the more I think about it now, the more I realize that your business or any organization really needs to align with your goal. So me running an anonymous page does not line up with connecting people. That's just not, that's not good alignment really. If you really want to connect people and get to know people, you have to put your face to the page. So I realized, okay, I'm going to do that. I actually had never watched a podcast up to that point, and I remember my friend showing me this one podcast, and I kind of went down a rabbit hole, and I'm like, okay, you can find a podcast about anything. There's sports, world news, business, cars, anything. So I'm like, you know what? Maybe I can start a podcast for fun because I'm shy, but I think I should like start learning how to talk to people more and figuring out more about what they do. I think that's really interesting.
As I've gone on and started recording these podcasts with these wonderful guests that I probably wouldn't have met otherwise, I've really been able to branch out and meet different people from all backgrounds. And but coming back to the point that we all share something in common, it's been really nice to know that we have these experiences in common, and we've had some of the same classes as each other. We know some of the same people, and I've considered myself really lucky to be able to be in the position to hear these stories firsthand, as well as be in a position to share these stories. Because, like I said before, I didn't realize how powerful it was to really hear the stories of other people and then share them with all you watching these videos. So, as I've started posting all these podcasts, it comes with a lot of questions because I guess this is such a new idea. At first, people even thought this page was a scam, but no, it's not. And I wanted to put my face to it and kind of answer some of the questions. So, a lot of the questions are kind of about why did you start this page? And I kind of mentioned before, I want it to be motivational, inspirational, social, charitable, all these things, but none of the reasons are to gloat or brag. I really understand that high school is a difficult time for a lot of people where they grow up and they figure out a lot of things. Some people lose some of their friends, and but like I said, it was a really challenging experience for me, and I want to share some of the experiences that I had during high school that I feel like are really, important for other people to hear, without tooting my own horn too much. But it's not to say that, I had the perfect high school career or that I'm, dwelling on that fact. It's really to share that, there are so many amazing stories of people that come out of PET, and it really goes beyond, what school they go to or what grades they have after. It's really about hearing their story and what makes each person unique. And that's what I always tell my guests. I say, the reason why I wanted to start this page is because everyone has their own story.